please take a moment right now to hit like, subscribe, and share.
Especially share. That's the big one.
Hey, Joel Haas here, fellow lover of old movies, purveyor of pictures past, and student of superannuated cinema. Yes, I love old movies. And the other day I got to musing about why. What is it about these films of a bygone era that holds such a ferocious fascination for me? I immediately thought of the many times my kids have found me watching an old movie. You know, maybe something like Broadway Melody of 1940, or Top Hat, or one of Bob and Bing's on-the-road movies. And they would invariably ask me, "Are you watching an oldie again?" To which I would always answer, "Yes, this movie was made back when, to be a star, you had to have talent." Now, don't get me wrong, there are plenty of talented people in Hollywood these days. Just seems to me like we expected more from stars back when things, or at least the movies, were black and white. I think this is most vividly seen in comedy films. Hear me out on this. In the last 20 years or so, Hollywood has given us comedies like Meet the Fockers, Dodgeball, American Pie, Grown Ups, and Ted. Yuck. Honestly, have we seen anything lately that is as genuinely funny as a Marx Brothers movie, or as witty as an on-the-road flick? And I gotta believe today's movie makers must hang their heads in shame when they watch anything starring Martin and Lewis. I mean, they sang, they danced, they absolutely killed with their comedy. Absolutely killed. I suppose there are a lot of reasons for this. Everything from the sort of groupthink of the 1940s and 50s to the jaded, I've seen it all reality of the 21st century, to the short attention spans that have led to a different style of comedy. But I still think one of the biggest reasons, generally speaking, for the lack of quality in today's films is talent. I mean, guys like Gene Kelly, James Cagney, and Jimmy Stewart, women like Grace Kelly, Ginger Rogers, and Sid Charisse, they worked and sweat and practiced. They showed discipline and poise. Acts like the Marx Brothers and Abbott and Costello, they honed their acts, often in front of a live audience, perfecting their timing, wording, and facial expressions. I know there are exceptions, but so many of these stars of old made it big for one simple reason. They had talent. So there's another reason that I have a positive emotional response to old-fashioned, dated stories of the silver screen. Or you might say it this way: there's another reason that I love old movies.
Hello, film historians. I'm Derek, and I love old movies. We've got Sam the sidekick here.
Hello, and welcome to episode 55.
Episode History Comes Alive.
Oh man, you're back to that?
Back to what?
The whole rhyming thing.
Well, I mean, if it seems appropriate.
It's never appropriate.
What?
Yeah.
Never?
No.
But what about...
No.
All the times that people have told me
No,
that...
they haven't. No rhymes.
Fine.
I'm glad that's settled. This week, we are following up on our last episode where we looked at Davy Crockett, King of the Wild Frontier.
That episode was tremendously successful for us. It is currently our 5th most listened to episode ever, and one of only 6 we've ever done to break 1,000 total listens.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah.
What are the others?
Double Indemnity, Dark City, The Lawless Breed, To Hell and Back, and The Treasurer of the Sierra Madre.
That is an eclectic bunch.
No kidding. But like Sam said, we are going to continue along with all things Crockett for a bit, and this time we will be looking at the 1960 epic The Alamo, directed by and starring one of your favorites, John Wayne.
I mean, it's not The Searchers or Rio Bravo, but it'll do.
Okay. Should we get onto our pre-taped business section and then move on?
You bet. So, business number 1, thanks for being here.
Yep.
Thanks for listening. We love watching these films and chatting about them for you. It's a lot of fun.
Absolutely. And you know what else? We love hearing from you. So if you ever have like an idea or a thought or a suggestion for us, a film we could cover, or a part of the film you'd like to hear us talk about, let us know.
Also, if you'd like to read a cold open for the podcast, maybe talking about a nostalgic or formative experience you had watching movies, get in touch and let's make that happen right away.
You don't even have to have come from a small town in the Ottawa Valley.
But bonus points if you did.
Always. And then if you're looking for something fun to do right now, or maybe later on the weekend, why not check us out on the socials?
Why not indeed? After all, we are on the Facebook.
I Love Old Movies, the podcast.
The Instagram.
At I Love Old Movies, the podcast.
El Twitter.
At ILOM podcast.
And the good old-fashioned email.
I Love Old Movies, the podcast at gmail.com.
All one word.
And of course, you should also do what all the cool kids do, and you know what I'm going to say, that is pet the rock. And by this we mean head on over to petrockradio.ca to listen to amazing local web-based radio programming. It's got fantastic music, it's got previous episodes of our show, it's got incredible hosts, and we are broadcast once, twice, thrice a week.
Monday and Saturday and Sunday.
Come for the music, stay for the podcasts.
We'll link that for you in the description.
So, are you all ready to head on down to Texas and volunteer to fight an unwinnable battle against an unbeatable foe?
I got my Bowie knife and black powder all ready to go. Hit the music.
Despite having a legendary career as a screen actor, John Wayne was not known as a director. In fact, while his IMDb page lists 5 directing credits, 3 of those are uncredited, and one has him listed as one of 3 directors on the project. The Alamo stands as the only film Wayne directed on his own. In fact, even when his old creative partner John Ford would come by the set, Wayne would send him off to shoot footage he would never use, just to keep him from interfering. The Alamo was a passion project for Wayne, and was a film he tried to get made for years, finally taking on the task of attempting to finance it himself. And while the film was a hit in theaters, the massive costs involved in making the film saw financial losses and debts that Wayne wouldn't crawl out of until 1971, when the film debuted on television, bringing a whole new revenue stream. Wayne's status as a star couldn't be overlooked, so much so that a condition of some of the financing he received was that he himself had to play a larger role. A starring role. Wayne had intended to cast himself as Sam Houston, but reassigned himself the role of Davy Crockett to appease investors. And as a director, while Wayne definitely had the passion, vision, and work ethic required, being a new director in charge of an epic production led to some actors not wanting to be involved with the project. The acting in the film suffers a bit as well, as Wayne did not become known as a director who made the most of his actors' talents. This led to many conflicts with Richard Widmark, who felt he was miscast, poorly directed, and only stayed with the production under threats of a lawsuit. But in all, if you were going to direct only one film in your career, let it be a big one, right? And for John Wayne, The Alamo was certainly that.
The writer is James Edward Grant. Initially working as a journalist in Chicago, Grant got his official start with screenwriting when his short story, The Whipshaw, was adapted into a film with Spencer Tracy in 1935. Throughout the 1930s, a majority of his work consisted of short stories and novels that were adapted into films, such as The Ex-Mrs. Bradford, 1936, and We're Going to Be Rich in 1938. Grant continued to write these stories into the 40s, but he became much more active in writing actual screenplays in the 40s and 50s, such as The Lady is Willing, 1942, Father is a Bachelor, 1950, and Hondo, 1953. He's probably most known for his work on The Sheepman in 1958, which he actually won an Academy Award for, the Alamo in 1960, and the Comancheros in 1961. Ending his career with 60 writing credits, Grant died in 1966 at the age of 60.
Richard Widmark studied acting in school, and after graduating with a degree in speech, he actually taught acting. He made his radio debut in 1938 and landed the lead role in the daytime serial Front Page Feral in the early 1940s. He continued working on high-profile radio shows right up until 1981. Widmark appeared on Broadway and Chicago stages in 1943 in a production of Dreamgirl, and this is where 20th Century Fox discovered him and promptly signed him to a 7-year film contract. Widmark's first movie, 1947's film noir Kiss of Death, saw him portray a sociopathic villain named Tommy Udo. The movie was both a critical and commercial success and landed him a Golden Globe win as well as an Academy Award nomination. This was despite the fact he was almost not cast at all. The director, Henry Hathaway, did not want Widmark for the role, feeling that his high forehead made him appear too intellectual. Fortunately, Hathaway was overruled by studio boss Darryl F. Zanuck. Widmark proved able to play both villainous and heroic roles, finding success almost no matter what he did. By 1954, while still making films and continuing his radio career, he also began filming spots on various television shows and movies. And after his 7-year contract with 20th Century Fox came to an end, he deliberately went independent in order to gain more artistic control over his roles and eventually formed his own production company. Interesting late career film appearances for him included Murder on the Orient Express, the medical horror thriller Coma, and the schlocko killer B-movie The Swarm. Widmark also managed to defy most Hollywood standards and remained married to his high school sweetheart, screenwriter Jean Hazelwood, for 55 years, the marriage only coming to an end upon her death in 1997. In 2007, Richard Widmark sustained a fractured vertebra after a fall, and died about 6 months later of complications. He was 93 years old.
Frankie Avalon was born in 1940 and made his American network television debut in 1952 as a trumpet player in a sketch on The Jackie Gleason Show. He became a teen idol, having 31 Billboard singles between 1958 and 1962, including 2 number-1 hits in 1959, Venus and Why. Why holds a special place on Billboard charts as the last number-1 song of the 1950s. Why also became Frankie's final top 10 hit as he opted to concentrate on his acting career to the detriment of his recording career. Following Ricky Nelson's hit in 1959's Rio Bravo, the studios opted to cast many of music's teen idols in films as supporting actors to older male stars in the hopes of attracting a younger audience in addition to the public that the main stars would bring. Frankie's first film was a minor role in 1957's Jamboree, where he appeared playing the trumpet and singing. His work on the film Timberland was seen by John Wayne, who at the time was looking for a young actor to play the role of Smitty in his passion project, 1960's The Alamo. This would be Frankie's second dramatic role, and Wayne certainly did his part in selling the young man as an actor, claiming that he would not cut one bit of any of Frankie's scenes, going even a step further and declaring Frankie the finest young talent I've seen in a long time. 1963 saw Frankie star with Annette Funicello in Beach Party, which was such a hit they ended up making several official and unofficial sequels. Even today, any mentions of Beach Party movies leads people to immediately think of this pair. After the third film of these Beach Party movies was released in 1964, Bikini Beach, Frankie announced that he had signed with American International Pictures to do 10 films in the next 5 years. 1978's Grease had a cameo appearance by Frankie, once more appearing as himself and performing Beauty School Dropout, and this introduced Frankie to a new generation of fans, and he enjoyed a bit of fame resurgence. This isn't to say that Frankie's career was over, far from it. He branched out, creating Frankie Avalon products, a line of health and cosmetic aids, and frequently promoted his products on the Home Shopping Network. 2007 saw Frankie take part in stage productions of Grease, as well as a reality show looking to cast a new Sandy. Frankie also appeared on American Idol in 2021, and he had a spot performing on Dancing with the Stars. Frankie Avalon is alive and well at the age of 81.
The story of the production of the Alamo, John Wayne's legendary passion project, is a tale ultimately of money.
Aren't all tales about money? I mean, really.
You are too young to be that cynical. But yes, they are.
Please continue.
Wayne had wanted to make a large-scale film based on the Alamo for a long time, and he really wanted to do it with Republic Pictures, where he had made so many movies. The problem is, Republic mostly made cheapies and quickies, so going all in on a project of the scope of the Alamo just wasn't in their corporate mindset. Eventually, Wayne realized that if this film was going to be made, he wouldn't do it with Republic. And in fact, he might not be able to do it with a major studio at all.
This was becoming a trend in the 50s too, wasn't it? Actors and directors either starting their own production companies,
Like Burt Lancaster.
or securing their own funding and making independent films.
John Huston knew a thing or two about that.
So Wayne striking off on his own seems very on trend for that era.
Oh, for sure. Wayne had the connections and the reputation to start attracting some big dough. And it was going to take big dough to get this film made. Eventually, he partnered with United Artists, who put $2.5 million in and agreed to distribute. Wayne had other investors as well, and it was at their insistence that as a condition of putting their money in, Wayne had to star. Even that wasn't enough, though, and Wayne had to leverage his own personal fortune, mortgaging everything he had to raise even more money to see the film produced.
These indie films from that era always seem to have a patchwork of funding. Dollars from everywhere.
Well, and with everything so precarious with the financing, Wayne looked for ways to cut corners. And one big way he wanted to cut costs was to shoot in Mexico. Everything would literally cost less there, and their dollars would go farther.
There's a but there.
Yeah, but some of the investors were rich Texan business types, and they hated the idea of a film about Texas history where the Mexicans are the bad guys being shot in Mexico. There was only one place to shoot the film, they insisted, and that was in Texas. The Daughters of the Alamo, the actual keepers of the historical space, they were in full agreement. Shoot the film in Texas.
Where things would cost more.
Yeah, where's the business sense that got these guys rich in the first place?
But we got that fantastic set.
Oh, we sure did. Wayne commissioned the construction of a 3/4 scale replica of the actual Alamo, built out of adobe bricks and all. It looks fantastic on film, and it was such an incredible set that it's been used in other films and even documentaries about the Alamo. It's still thought of as one of the most impressive sets ever built for a film.
Okay, so Richard Widmark did not like working on this film, right?
No, he did not. He felt miscast as Jim Bowie, for starters. He did not respect Wayne's work as a director, finding it at odds with his own artistic instincts and interpretation of his character, for seconders.
And for thirders?
He and Wayne personally did not like each other, like at all. Widmark was a man of very progressive politics, and Wayne was a HUAC-supporting, gun-advocating Republican. Yeah, those two were not close. And things got so bad that Widmark did try to leave the production and had to return under threat of a lawsuit.
Widmark wasn't the first choice, though, was he?
No. Wayne was really keen to bring in both Clark Gable and Charlton Heston for lead roles, but Gable balked at working on an epic with a first-time director. Heston had similar reservations, perhaps being spoiled by working with Cecil B. DeMille, but he was also politically quite opposed to Wayne at the time, and just didn't want to face the backlash of being in this movie. Years later, when Heston's personal politics did a complete 180, he openly regretted not being in this film.
Okay, last thing. What was up with Chill Wills?
So, Wills played Beekeeper, one of Crockett's men, and Wills decided he should get an Oscar nomination for the role, and he campaigned heavily for it. Taking out his own kiss-ass, suck-up ads in trade papers, openly begging for the nomination and win. This was seen as being in incredibly poor taste, and he drew printed rebukes from Groucho Marx, who openly stated he voted for someone else to win the award, and John Wayne himself, who took out counter ads to basically shoot Wills down.
And he didn't win.
Of course he didn't win. But for those of you scoring along at home, Peter Ustinov did. What's the tail of the tape on this one, Sam?
Okay, so we have a 6.8 on IMDb. The audience score is 64% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yikes.
And the tomato meter is 52%.
Wow.
The film won an Academy Award for Best Sound and was nominated for 7 others. The film can be watched on the MGM add-on to Amazon Prime.
The territory of Texas is under military threat from the Mexican forces commanded by General Santa Anna. Sam Houston needs time to build an army before confronting the much larger and better equipped Mexican troops.
Colonel Bill Travis has been given the task of defending the Alamo, formerly a religious mission. While manpower is low, morale is high. The Alamo is in a strategic location, so the longer it holds, the better for Houston.
The Alamo is bolstered by the arrival of volunteer reinforcements under the command of Jim Bowie and 23 Tennesseans under Davy Crockett.
Things seem less imminently dire when Crockett and his men arrive, so they have time not only for partying, but Davy even inserts himself into the life of a young woman to help keep her out of an arranged marriage.
Before long, Santa Anna's massive army arrives and the siege begins in earnest. When the Mexicans offer terms for surrender, Travis orders his cannon fired, showing his intention to fight. The Mexicans reply with a volley from a massive cannon that can easily outrange any gun the Alamo has.
Crockett takes a group of men on a daring nighttime raid and sabotage the cannon. This bold strike raises morale even more, especially with the expectation that Colonel James Fannin is en route with hundreds of men.
As food gets low and men are taking sick due to tainted salt pork, the men of the Alamo again raid the Mexican camps, this time making off with hundreds of steers, depriving their attackers of their own on-the-hoof food supply and bolstering their own.
Also stealing a high-quality horse, Crockett sends his youngest man, Smitty, to send a message to Sam Houston directly. He doesn't believe Houston will arrive in time to help, but carrying the dispatch might save Smitty's life.
Santa Anna's men launch a frontal attack on the Alamo, but the defenses hold and the attack is repelled. Many Mexicans are killed, but almost a third of the men in the Alamo are killed or wounded. Jim Bowie takes a grievous wound to the leg, ending his ability to fight.
Hope of salvation is shattered when a messenger arrives, explaining that Fannin's men have been ambushed and wiped out. This means that help is not going to arrive in time, and the Alamo will be lost. Travis and his men will stay, but he allows the volunteers to withdraw with all honor. He pays tribute to the gallantry of Crockett and Bowie's men, and all the volunteers decide to stay.
Women and children and men who cannot fight are all evacuated and given safe passage by the Mexicans. But once they are clear, the final attack comes. Santa Anna sends his entire army, which attacks the fort from all sides, breaching the walls and gates and overrunning the Alamo.
Travis is killed, then Crockett, and finally Bowie, fighting from his sickbed. The Alamo's defenders are killed to the last man. The wife and child of a soldier are found by the attacking force and allowed to depart. She meets Smitty, who has just returned, having missed the battle, and the two depart together.
The end.
Really, the end.
Yeah.
Like, that's as definitive an ending as you can have.
There is no The Alamo 2.
Thank goodness for that.
Yeah.
So, pros and cons?
You bet.
Say the thing.
Okay, so as always, we don't actually rate films here on the show. There are no stars. There are no thumbs. We just tell you some things we liked.
Some things we didn't.
And then we recommend whether or not you might enjoy giving this one a watch.
Take it away.
My pros. Number one, the production values. There was a lot of money spent on making the Alamo, and it's all up there on screen, giving this film a truly epic feel. The cinematic location shooting, the fantastic sets, especially the Alamo itself, the large number of extras all in costumes, it's just truly a spectacle. Number two, the battle scenes. This is the part of the film that really shines. Wayne knew exactly how to show what he wanted to show here. When the action hits, the film kicks into life. Horses galloping, men running, muskets firing in waves, cannon fire exploding all around. As slow and as down as the quieter parts of the film can be, the action sequences are great. They have the tension, drama, and kinetic visuals that really draw a viewer in, and it makes the long setup worth it. Number three, the nice slow pace. This movie absolutely takes its time to get where it wants to go. Time is spent on establishing everything. All the people, the history, the relationships, especially between Crockett and his men, and the interesting leadership triangle of Crockett, Bowie, and Travis. And while the movie is undeniably slow, everything has time to breathe. We know the characters, we understand the stakes, and when the battle finally comes, our appetite is well whetted. On one hand, it can be seen as being indulgent to make an overly long film, but here it seems more like an act of restraint. Let's really set this up before we take it home. It's a storytelling decision that doesn't always work, but it does here. My cons... Number one, the acting. There's a good script here. There's a good vision, there's a good story to be told, but Wayne as director was a bit better with the broader strokes, and a bit less good in his handling of actors, and especially line delivery. Everyone just seems to say their lines. The words get across, the intention is delivered, it's all competent, but it never grabs you. There are some lofty speeches in this film. Crockett's monologue about republics is a good example, but they're all left a little short on the ability they have to create an impact. The artistic oomph that good delivery can give to good lines is missing here. And the cast isn't the issue, since everyone has been good elsewhere, Wayne especially. But this is a directorial issue. Inexperienced shows. Number two, the subplot about Graciela and the forced marriage. I get that it lends some human connection to the stakes of the Battle of the Alamo, and it creates a bit of a romance angle for viewers, but really, it's not needed. We don't need more examples of Crockett's nobility in helping her. It could have just been done and over, but they drag it out. It becomes a whole story. Let's get to the battle scenes. This particular subplot doesn't add anything. Mercifully, it does stop short of subtracting from the film, but in the end, it's just not needed. In all, there's just too much introducing of Crockett. We see him with his men. We see him with Travis. We see him with Bowie. We see him with Graciela. Yeah, we get it. He's an incredible guy. The Battle of the Alamo occupies a special place in American history. Along with perhaps Custer's Last Stand and Pearl Harbor, it acts as sort of a galvanizing moment for the American vision of freedom, expansionism, patriotism, and nationalistic heroism. Its role in the cultural zeitgeist probably cannot be understated, so the only way to think of this film really is through that lens. Not is this film objectively good or subjectively enjoyable. Does it hit the mark as a dramatized document of a significant historical moment? I'm not an expert on the subject at all, but as a viewer, while I can accept that the events of the Alamo probably didn't go down exactly as shown in the film, I'm satisfied that this is a good enough retelling. It's a spectacle, certainly befitting the legends, and honestly, this was really the project John Wayne was born to make. His respect for the characters, the themes, the people on all sides of the conflict come through, and we wind up with a film that is both the bombast required, but also the quiet and sensitive spots, and that's what makes it a success. Wayne can be a polarizing figure in films, largely due to his stereotypical performances and his personal politics, but here, as a creative force, he was never better. Give this one a watch. You're up.
Okay, so my pros. 1. The intro. It wasn't anything super cool or anything, but it was just a little intro card that set up the film. It gave some background information about what's been happening and what we're heading into. Honestly, I'm really bad with history pre-1900s, so I appreciate the info this gave me, since I was able to go into it knowing when, where, and why the film was taking place. 2. The fighting scenes. They were crazy. Absolutely the highlight of the film for me. Specifically, the final fight where the Alamo gets overrun. It was just non-stop gunfire, people getting killed, and explosions, and fire, and cannons. Honestly, the part where the soldiers put ladders up the sides of the wall at the Alamo reminded me of Minas Tirith and Lord of the Rings. But still, so much was always happening. And you know how it's going to end, but it's still so exciting to watch it. 3. John Wayne. What can I say? I see a John Wayne movie, and I watch said John Wayne movie. I've been watching films with this guy since I was a kid, and some of them are still a few of my favorite movies ever. I can't believe it actually took us so long to watch one of his movies, which was The Quiet Man, and it wasn't even a Western. This evened things up a bit in my mind. But seriously, I just really love this guy. Now my cons. 1. Everything before the Alamo. What's that saying that sometimes comes up on this show? You know, the one about a chorus? Ah, yes, that's it. Don't bore us, get to the chorus! This perfectly sums up how I felt for the entire first section of the film. There was so much setup around Bowie and Travis and Crockett. Like, we get it. They're all super important and influential people. Let's move on. And all those interactions with Crockett and the girl that were like almost a romance, I couldn't stand that stuff. Everything really picked up the pace once we got to the Alamo, but it felt like it took an unbearably long time to actually get there. 2. The runtime. This was a long movie. A really long movie. Now, normally that wouldn't necessarily bother me if I'm into the film and the story, but I could feel every minute dragging on with this one. Every scene felt like it was too long, and the first part of the film moved so slowly. It was honestly a little boring in some sections. I feel like there were just some scenes that could have been cut out and they wouldn't have really been missed. 3. The acting. So, really, I can't complain about the big, crazy action scenes in the movie, because those were epic. But in any other scene where there were just some people talking to each other, it was kind of rough. The way people delivered their lines and acted through those scenes, brutal. And I get it. A director with no experience was directing the film, but the thing is, you could tell that it was an amateur. Those scenes just didn't have the same quality or sincerity as the action scenes. It was clear how poorly the actors were directed, and it was a real shame because I think those scenes could have been a lot more meaningful if more effort was put into them. Now, despite the directing and everything surrounding that, this is a good film. I liked it when I saw it years ago as a kid, and I like it now. Plus, it's got John Wayne as Davy Crockett. What more could you ask for? Go give it a watch.
All right. And as it does every time, our recommendations bring us to a close of another episode. And it is a double watch recommendation for the Alamo.
What do you think? Is this a classic epic historical film? Up there with Lawrence of Arabia and Ben-Hur? Or is it too much of a Western and too jingoistic?
Is it better than the Disney remake from about 20 years ago with Dennis Quaid? We haven't seen that one, but if you have, let us know.
We don't love remakes here, so we miss a lot of them.
That's true.
Although, the Italian Job remake was pretty good.
Yeah, but for every Italian Job, there's like 5 Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes.
That sounds like a whole other episode. Our favorite and least favorite remakes?
Ooh, totally. Sounds like something for episode 60, maybe. That's coming up soon, too.
Let's do it. But until then, be sure to watch more movies.
And also feel free to tell people all about our podcast. We are not a secret, and you do not have to keep us all to yourselves.
So tell your friends.
Tell your enemies.
You never know. They might like fighting to the last man against impossible odds as much as you do.
Maybe even more. For Sam the Sidekick, I'm Derek, and I love old movies. Additional research for I Love Old Movies, the podcast, is done by Nikki Weatherden. Audio clips come from freefx.co.uk. Images are used through the provisions of fair use, and our theme song, Burning Bridges, is by The Crocs.